Okay, so I think it's about time to start now. I believe others will come in sooner or later. All right, okay. So let us start. Okay, colleagues and friends, good afternoon, good morning, especially good morning to Robert in the US coast, and also good evening. Some of you might be in Australia or some other places. Okay, now welcome to today's sessions, which serves as PolyU's fourth Evolve, that is the Global Engagement and Student Development Salon, as well as the eighth USRN Online Forums that held in collaborations with the University Social Responsibility Network, the USRN. I'm Ben Yan, the Vice President, Student and Global Affairs at the Hong Kong Polytechnic Universities. I'm also the Chairman of the USRN Executive Committees. It is my pleasure to be your host today. We have, as I mentioned early on, we have close to 200 people registered for today's events. I believe some of them, sooner or later, they will join us. And I'm especially pleased that in addition to colleagues from PolyU, we also have participants from USRN members institutions and other universities joining us from around the world today. So your presence truly reflects the global and collaborative spirit of these forums. Our topics today is engaging, selecting, and supporting students in university social responsibility and volunteering programs, criteria, processes, and evaluations. This is a highly relevant and timely topics for all of us working in higher educations as we continue to explore ways to design meaningful and impactful communities engaging opportunities for our students. Across institutions, we often face similar questions when designing social responsibility and volunteering programs for students. How do we engage and motivate diverse students? How do we ensure that our selection criteria are fair, transparent, and aligned with programs' goals? And how do we evaluate these programs in ways that both improve quality and support students' developments? Today's salons offer a valuable opportunity for colleagues from PolyU's and fellow USRN members institutions to exchange insights, good practices, and practical examples in these areas. So please allow me to take this opportunity to briefly introduce the University Social Responsibility Network, the USRN. So the USRN was established back in 2015 by PolyU and together with 11 other founding members institutions. Since then, it has grown into a dynamic global alliances of 24 universities from major regions of the world, all committed to advancing university social responsibility through collaborations, innovations, and collective actions. So PolyU is honored to host the network's secretariat through our Global Engagement Office. And obviously, Miranda Choi has been very helpful and providing support to the USRN members institutions. So this reflects PolyU's strong commitment to promoting university social responsibility and fostering international collaborations in this important area. So back to today's forums, we will first hear from today's three speakers who will share their perspectives and experiences on this important topic, followed by discussion sessions. And I would also like to note that today's sessions is being recorded and will be made available on the USRN website afterwards, so that colleagues who are unable to join us may also benefit from these forums. So now is a very good opportunity today because we have the USRN forums and also the Evolve Salon sessions at PolyU. We joint efforts co-organize these forums. And I would like to ask everyone, if you don't mind, to turn on your screen and we take a group photos. Julia, good to see you from Manchester. Hi, Julia. Okay. So we take a group photo first, and then Miranda, is it okay for you to capture the screen? And then I believe there will be more than one screen. We will do a few screens, a few screenshots. Okay. So everyone for the first screen, smile, look at your camera, smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then Miranda, you go to the next screen. So, okay, ready, Miranda? Okay, again for the next screen. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay. So another screen. I think another screen that will do. Okay, the last one. So 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, is that finished, Miranda? Done? Okay, good. All right. Okay, good. So thank you. So let's back to business. So without further delay, so let us give a warm welcome to our first speaker. So Mrs. Zeynep Bahar. She's from the Civic Involvement Projects Manager at Sabanci Universities in Turkey. So Ms. Bahar is a senior practitioner in civic engagement and participatory learning with over 20 years of experience at Sabanci Universities. She leads the Civic Involvement Projects Office, where she designs and implements programs that integrate social responsibility into higher education. So without further ado, Ms. Bahar, please. You have to unmute the mic. Okay, I can see your screen. You just need to unmute. We cannot hear you yet. Okay.
Yes, I think
Yes,
we
good.
did. Hi,
We can
hi
hear you
everyone.
now. Good, thanks.
Perfect,
Okay, I pass the time
perfect.
to you now.
Yes, good morning for everyone, and very, very early morning for Robert. Very nice to see you all here. I'm very happy that we could get together here for sharing such an important issue, I think, for all of us. And thank you very much, Ben, for the introductions. Since we have 10 minutes, I just want to get in fast and try to share as much as I can so that if you have any questions, we have the time to discuss about them. Today, I'd like to share how we actually approached one of the most important questions for me in community engagement programs in universities. Who becomes a student leader, a volunteer? How do we select them? And perhaps even more importantly, how do we keep them engaged over time in our programs? Um, uh, I will use CIP, which stands for Civic Involvement Projects program in our university as a case study to go over this issue. CIP is a compulsory first-year course that has been the part of Sabanci University since 1999 from our establishment. The main goal here is to help students develop as socially responsible and active citizens to direct engagement with real life social issues. So we care about, of course, the scientific education in the campus, but we also care very much about what kind of people we raise in the university and what kind of graduates we send to world after their graduation. So I think what makes CIP different is that it is based on experimental learning, and students do not simply learn about civic engagement in classroom. They actively design and implement projects in partnership with the communities. So the students learn by doing, reflecting, and taking responsibility in our program. To make this possible, we have three-level structure. First, we have the CIP office, which coordinates the overall program. Me and four of my colleagues, we work together in this office. And secondly, we have student leaders called supervisors and the overvisors. These students act as peer leaders and facilitators in our program. And finally, the third one, we have each semester over 600 students participate in our projects, which is over 1,000 students through one academic year. The student leadership layer is very important because it creates the bridge between the office and the students taking the course while allowing peer-to-peer learning to take place in the course as well. And the supervisors are the volunteers that we try to find in campus and take in our program as volunteers. So it's very important for us to reach them and find the right people who can be the best supervisors in our program. Our projects in our program cover a wide range of themes. I will not get into detail, but if you have interest in any one of them, I would be very happy to keep in touch after this session. Some of our projects focus on education, such as working with primary schools or special education institutions, and others provide direct support to communities, including elderly care or animal welfare, and etc. We also run awareness-oriented projects on topics such as human rights, gender, health, disaster, environmental awareness, and digital citizenship. This varies from semester to semester, but these are the basic ones. And this diversity allows our students to connect actually with their interests and their meaningful social issues together in the program. The supervisors system that I want to talk about is actually, I would call, the backbone of our program. The supervisors guide first-year students throughout their project experience for one semester, and they facilitate the meetings, support their project implementation, help solve their problems, and act as a role model to their project team. So because of this responsibility, we invest significantly in the leadership and the facilitation training before the students, the supervisors take on the role of being the leader of the projects. Okay, the supervisor selection process is one of our main issues that we deal at the end of each semester. This is where the central question actually of this presentation today begins. We do not select supervisors based on their grades or academic performance. Instead, what we try to do is we use a multi-layered evaluation process. In this process, the first step is a motivation form where students reflect on why they want to become supervisors and what they have learned from their own CIP experience and how they actually understand the concepts such as participation, civic engagement, participatory democracy, and so on. So the motivation form is just not a form of application for us. It actually stands for us the meaning of understanding how the candidates think about leadership and civic engagement and their own learning journey through the program. So rather than looking for the right answers in that form, we look for reflection and self-awareness and genuine commitment to social responsibility of that specific candidate who has finished filling out that form. So the second step is the interviews. We have two more steps here. We conduct both group interviews and individual interviews. The group interviews allow us to observe communication skills, teamwork, and collective problem solving for the candidates. We give the candidates some cases and ask them to prepare and work with other candidates to solve these cases and then present to us so that we can see them, how they work in a group and how they communicate with people and how they would be when they do that in our projects in CIP. After that, for the ones who pass that step, we have the individual interviews to help understand the motivation, the leadership potential, and the conflict management skills, and the social awareness, of course, of that specific candidate. We ask them questions not to get any specific answers, so we're not looking for right answers, but what we want to do is to get to know more about that candidate, how they act in a stressful moment, for example, or how they react and solve a problem when they need to take an initiative, and so on and so forth. So for the candidates who also pass that second step, we finally have the component of getting a peer feedback. This is very also important for us. We go back to the supervisors who have previously worked with the candidate and evaluate their reliability, communication, responsibility, and overall sustainability for a leadership role in the CIP, because those peers get to know them for a totally long semester. So what they think about that candidate is very important for us. It is also important because if that candidate gets to be chosen, they are going to be part of the CIP team and they will be working with the present supervisors. So their understanding and their visions of the new candidates is very important for us at that moment. And at the very end, we look at the combination of these criteria, including, I would say, communication, leadership, responsibility, creativity, social awareness, motivation, and alignment with the values of CIP. So, in other words, I can say we are not looking for any perfect student. We are looking for students who can help others learn and also have a potential to grow themselves as well. So that's actually what kind of a student, what kind of a young person we are looking to volunteer in our program. All of this information is brought together in a comprehensive evaluation form. The form combines interview results, peer feedback, previous performance, and qualitative comments. As you can see in the screen, they all come up and add together, and each candidate get a number out of 10. So, for example, this is an, of course, unrealistic example, but this person, for example, gets 7.4 out of 10. So each candidate has a point where they get with the combination of all these criteria for all the previous steps that I've been talking about. So this gives us a very much richer understanding of the candidate than any single score or interview could provide to get that all together in one form. It also helps us to make selection decisions in more transparent and consistent way, because many of the candidates that apply to our program and are not chosen come back and ask why they are not chosen. And happily and unfortunately, this program is quite popular in our campus. So we can each semester, I would say we can get a maximum 1/3 of the applicants to the program. So it is also why it's important for us to make it transparent to the students for the criteria why they are not chosen if they're not. One of the reasons the system, I think, has survived for more than 25 years is that CIP is not perceived just as a course in the campus. Over the years, it has become a culture and a community within the university, and the students can clearly see a progression path to them if they enter the program. They start as a CIP 101 student, and then they become a supervisor, and then maybe they become an overvisor, and many continue doing that for many years, for 5 years, for the whole the time they are here in the campus. And we intentionally create a sense of belonging and an identity around CIP. So like the colors, the symbols, the language we use, and the tradition we maintain are all contribute to this culture. For example, orange and navy blue is our colors, and I will tell a little bit about later. We have a lamp, and as a symbol of CIP, you can also see in the pictures on top of our students. So when we ask students why they stay with us in this program, and the answers are rarely about only volunteering itself. So they talk more about leadership development they experienced. They talk about friendship they got in the program. They talk about finding a community where they feel they belong. And many of them tell us that CIP became one of the places where they learned the most about themselves and about the society at the time, them through their journey in the university. So this is why we often describe CIP not only as a volunteering program, but as a learning and leadership community in the campus. This slide actually summarizes what we hear most from the students. Students say students say that they stay engaged when they have a voice in the program and when they are involved in decision making rather than simply following instructions that are set by anyone else. So when they can see the impact of their work, it's very important to them. And when they feel that their experience contributes not only to society, but also to their own personal and professional development. So in other words, engagement grows when students feel ownership in the program, and that's one of the key things that we really keen on trying to keep in our program. And of course, communities does not happen automatically. We actively create spaces where students can come together beyond their individual projects. Every semester, we organize large all CIP meetings where we bring together all the students from different projects and roles. All the supervisors and overvisors come together in this all CIP meetings. And we also organize seminars, workshops, talks with civil society leaders, with academicians and professionals. So these activities help students see themselves as part of something larger than the only project they are running in themselves. And of course, recognition is another important element of our pro system. At the end of every semester, we publicly celebrate outstanding supervisors and overvisors for that term. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition in our programs comes at the graduation. Students who remain actively involved in CIP all through their university journey receive a special CIP lamp. As I told you, the lamp is the symbol of our program. So the lamp has become like the thing they want to reach at the end of their journey for 4 or 5 years. And for many students, receiving that lamp at the graduation is something like receiving a second diploma. So I also have my lamp here. This is basically what they get at the end. So this is where they give so many hours and so many good work for many years in the program to receive their diploma from our program as a lamp. At the same time, community alone does not enough. So engagement also requires, I think, accountability. So we have clear expectations regarding participation and responsibility from our students who are in the program. Students know that leadership roles come with commitment. So the system is based on not financial incentives, but on, I would say, trust and responsibility here. So this balance between belonging and accountability is one of the reasons the program actually stays sustainable. The final comment is, of course, as you can imagine, is evaluation, which is also very, very important for us. Everyone evaluates almost everyone else in the program and gives back their feedback to the others in the program. So students evaluate supervisors, supervisors evaluate overvisors and the CIP office. OCI overvisors provide feedback about all of them. So at the end of the semester, all supervisors and overvisors receive a personalized evaluation report highlighting the strengths and the areas for development for themselves. So they also know that we tracked their efforts all through the semester. And this, of course, reinforces culture of continuous learning for our students. Just as we expect students to reflect on social issues, we also expect them to reflect on their own leadership practice as well. So on the screen, I think you can all see an example of an evaluation card of a supervisor in our program. So this report combines feedback from their students they worked with and from us, from the office and from the supervisors, and with the also people they work out of the campus as well with the partners. So we evaluate not only the organizational performance side, but also the qualities such as communication, trust, respect, also, and the ability to create a positive team environment. So we share these criteria with them in the beginning of the term, so they all know that they will be graded accordingly, so they can keep their track of themselves through the academic term as well. So our goal here is to simply assess performance, but to also support the continuous development of student leaders, therefore, of course, our program. Over time, we have seen that the overvisors and the supervisors' experiences become one of the most powerful learning opportunities in the program. So students develop soft skills, including leadership, project management, communication, problem solving, I can say, and while taking responsibility for real projects and with real teams, with real people. So many of our supervisors tell us that they learned more about teamwork through this experience than they could ever from a textbook or a workshop or an education program they can get into about this soft skills. The impact expands beyond individual students also. The supervisor system helps us sustain projects and preserve institutional memory in a way and transfer the knowledge from one generation of students to the next generation. In many ways, supervisors are not only project leaders, but I think they are the people who keep the culture of CIP alive from year to year and generation to generation. So perhaps this is also why students stay involved in the program for 4 or 5 years when they're first, after they are chosen to be the supervisors. Um, so basically who gets in and who stays and who leads. After our experience, more than 25 years, we have learned that the answer is not necessarily the most talented students or the students who have the strongest resumes, but the students who stay and eventually become leaders are usually those who find purpose and take ownership of the program and feel part of us. Our role here as the CIP office, people leading the program, is not simply to select student leaders, but also our role is to create an environment where the leadership can emerge, grow, and be passed to the next generation, which will be our new students of our university in the upcoming years. So this is what we have experienced in the program all through the years. And I was very, very happy to share this with you. And also, I thank you very much for hanging in there and staying with me through my presentation. It was truly a pleasure. And I think we will be able to find time to answer questions if you have any. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Ms. Bahar. So now I would like to invite our second speakers, Mrs. Kim Tamsin Williams from the University of Pretoria in South Africa. So Mrs. Williams is a lecturer in Human Movement Studies and Sports Management at the University of Pretoria. She has a strong interest in curricular community engagement, motor learning, and students' development, with a particular focus on integrating community-based learning into teachings to support inclusive, practice-based students' engagement. Mrs. Williams, please.
Thank you very much, Prof. Yang, and good morning and good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thank you to the USRN for the opportunity to share my experience from the University of Pretoria. And today I would like to look at a practical example from curricular community engagement for one of the modules that I teach on the BA program within the Faculty of Education. And my presentation is titled From Preparation to Reflection through a Practice-Based Approach. And rather than focusing on how we select students for engagement opportunities, I'm going to briefly look at how the curriculum design itself can become a mechanism for inclusion, accountability, and student development. So here I just want to acknowledge some of the questions that came through from the registrants. And some of these questions focus on recruitment, motivation, selection, and evaluation. And these are really important questions. However, we might assume that these are questions that come from engagement opportunities that are limited by identifying the right students before participation can actually begin or can take place. And I would like to propose moving from selecting students rather to looking at developing students. And instead of asking who deserves access to the engagement opportunities, we could potentially ask how engagement can embed or be embedded in learning, and that students can participate, learn, and contribute through the engagement. So looking at this slide over here quickly, we look at what I describe as a traditional volunteer model versus the curricular community engagement model. And what we propose here is looking at how having the engagement embedded within the curriculum can focus on that shift from selection to developing students. And instead of asking students to demonstrate their motivation before participating, we create an environment where learning experiences can develop that motivation. And more so, students can then discover a sense of purpose and commitment only with or should I say, encounter that purpose and commitment through the engagement. So as opposed to focusing on access, we focus on learning and creating those opportunities for all students. So then the question changes from who should participate to how can participation become a learning opportunity for all. So I stem or take my presentation from the UP Curricular Community Engagement Framework. And this framework speaks to community engagement being embedded in teaching and learning and being linked to societal impact. Importantly, the framework also emphasizes on mutual benefit, co-design and student development, as well as assessment. So I'm going to quickly go into the context of my module. So this is a motor development module that I speak to where there are approximately 250 plus students. Community engagement, my apologies, is a component within the module, and it is aligned to the module outcomes. So the key message that we put forward to our students here is that engagement is part of the curriculum and not an extra activity. So students will then have the opportunity to engage with community partners, not as volunteers working on the outside of the curriculum, but rather as students participating in a structured learning experience. And this then means that the community engagement is integrated into the preparation activities as well as through the engagement opportunities, and then also the assessment and reflection opportunities that is given to the students. And the emphasis then is placed on not only participation, but also on learning through participation. So I'm going to talk through a learning cycle of how we structure the community engagement within this module, and we follow a prepare, engage, and consolidate cycle. And this is where preparation creates the readiness, engagement creates the experience, and reflection transforms the experience into learning. So let's start off by looking at the prepare cycle. And often we tend to overlook preparation, but here preparation is really building that readiness before we go into the engagement. And students have the opportunity here to explore the theory, the practical, the ethics, the community context, the expectations, as well as the professional reliability. So this is obviously what we call the foundation before we even go into the community and start working within the community spaces. So students then have an opportunity to look at the relevant theory. We take them through that theory. We have a prepare day, or what we call a prepare day, where depending on what the actual community engagement pertains to, they have an opportunity to really work through all the questions that they might have. We work through the practical elements of what they will be doing on the day. And we take them through creating a contextual environment and setting the expectation for them. But also this stage allows them to build the confidence to remove any form of anxiety while establishing the expectations for professional conduct and professional responsibility during the engagement. We then move into what we call the engage cycle. And the engage cycle is where community-based practice takes place. So the engagement is then where the students are able to take their knowledge into authentic environments. They are then not only participating in a one-way transfer of knowledge from university student into the community, but students have the opportunity to work with the community partners and to learn from the community partners while simultaneously contributing to their own expertise. This creates environments and opportunities for reciprocal learning and allows students to experience the complexity that often they cannot fully capture only in the classroom environments. So they are experiencing the complexity within practice. We then take a look at the next step of the cycle, which is referred to as the consolidate cycle. And I've labeled this as reflection as learning. And during the reflection cycle, students have the opportunity to acknowledge what their experience was and what their learning was. So they can reflect on what has happened, why it happened, what did they learn, how this will influence their future practice. And through structured reflections, students can then connect the theory to their practice. They can examine some of the assumptions that they might have had, recognize challenges, and identify future actions that would be necessary for them to take. And some of those reflection strategies that we look at are journals, guided prompts, critical incidents, as well as group debriefs. But then we don't just stop at the reflection part. We also look at an element of assessment and evaluation. And if I recall correctly, one of the forum questions spoke to how do we distinguish between engaged students and those simply seeking for certificates or CV opportunities. And this is where our approach, I believe, becomes very important, where we not assessing the motivation directly, but instead we are looking at the behaviors or assessing the behaviors and the learning. So students are evaluated on their preparation, their participation, their application, their reflection, and their citizenship. But at the same time, the community partners also provide us feedback on preparation or preparedness, value of engagement, communication, and also give through recommendations for future engagement with the community. And therefore, I sense that evaluation becomes a developmental process rather than a gatekeeping mechanism for our students. So if I had to put it in a nutshell as in what we've learned through this process or through this learning cycle of community engagement and through developing our students, is that there are three main lessons that come through for us. And that is inclusion increases participation, motivation develops through meaningful experiences, and reflection develops social responsibility. And to sum it up, we would say that community engagement becomes a learning process rather than a selection process. And as a final takeaway, what I would like to propose is a shift in our perspective. Rather than focusing primarily on selecting the right students, we can focus on designing experiences that can develop the students. And instead of asking who the best students are for community engagement, we can move to asking how can community engagement help us provide or help students become more socially responsible graduates. And I think that curricular community engagement provides a framework for doing this by integrating the preparation, engagement, and reflection cycles into the curriculum. And in that way, community engagement does not only become a once-off single service activity, but also a powerful educational strategy for developing socially responsible graduates. And that is the last slide. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Williams. I would now like to invite our final speakers, last but not the least, Professor Grace Ngai from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So Grace is an award-winning educator and researcher and currently serves as head of the Service Learning and Leadership's Office at PolyU. She has played a pioneering role in the development of service learning at the universities, including the creations of one of the PolyU's first service learning subjects, integrating community service with technology and computing. Grace has also led professional development initiatives to advance teachings, assessments, and scholarships in service learning with an impact that extends well beyond Hong Kong. So Grace, I pass the time to you now.
Thank you, Professor Young, and hello to everybody. Good morning, good evening to everybody. So the topic of my talk, I thought about it for a while, and then we're like, wait a moment, we talk a lot about supporting students, we talk a lot about selecting students, but can we really be sure that they're learning, right? And so that is the topic of my talk. Are we sure that they're learning? And we want to look at evidence-based evaluation and monitoring in service learning. So I guess I will just for the sake of completeness, I'll just start off with, a very brief intro into service learning, even though I'm pretty sure that everybody here knows what we're talking about, right? So service learning is an experiential learning pedagogy that combines service to the community with academic learning and critical reflection. And I don't think that anybody here is a stranger to service learning. We all believe in it. We all believe that students are transformed from service learning. We believe that communities benefit. We believe that the partnerships are reciprocal. I mean, that is kind of like the mantra, right, for service learning. But the belief is not evidence, right? If we are going to be placing students in communities that are vulnerable, because after all, if they weren't vulnerable, why do they need our student services? That means that we have a moral obligation to know whether what we are doing actually works. Right? This is not just a very fundamental thing. This is not a bureaucratic thing, right? It is a very fundamental ethical one. And I think, unfortunately, for the honest answer for much of the field is, honestly, we are not very sure. Right? So service learning promises transformation for students, for communities, for institutions, right? But a promise without evidence is just good intentions. And if we are going to claim that service learning benefits students and communities, I'm going to argue that we have an ethical obligation to go ahead and prove it. Okay? Now, we do measure. Okay. However, what we typically measure is the stuff that's on the right, on the left-hand side. We measure student satisfaction. We measure the output, hours of service completed, number of students that are placed, number of community partners. We have anecdotes. We have testimonials. Okay. These are the things that actually, I mean, they are good for numbers, they're good for KPI reporting by the university, but they tell us almost nothing about whether learning actually happened or whether the community actually benefited. The right-hand side column is where the evidence needs to go. Right? And then finally, there's one more thing. We tend to evaluate one stakeholder, the student. However, this relationship in service learning is supposed to involve at least four, right? We are supposed to have more stakeholders than just simply the student. We are supposed to have the community, the teachers, and the institution. And before you come and tell me, wait a minute, Grace, we are talking about engaging, selecting, and supporting students. I'm going to argue that without the teachers, without the institution, without the community, there is no student civic engagement. Okay, so therefore, all of these are equally important stakeholders in the whole service learning, volunteering, community engagement, whatever you call it, exercise. So there is actually a lot that we don't know. Okay, there are existing empirical studies, but they do not always follow established service learning principles. The quality of evidence is also not particularly high. There is a critical need to apply a scholarly approach to the development, implementation, and programmatic assessment of service learning programs. However, right now, there is a massive gap. So let me show you some research that I did. Okay, look at this table. Okay, Latin America, for example, has a very high service learning practice. It accounts for, at an estimate, 10 to 15% of the world's service learning activity. However, the research is very low. It accounts for only 1 to 3% of the index research. Now, I know that there are issues with indexing. I know that there are issues with Scopus, Web of Science, and all of that stuff. Okay, but it is what it is. Okay, what we are seeing is that there's a massive gap between the practice and the research. Okay, now what that means is that there are millions of community members that are being served by programs that have never been rigorously evaluated. There are millions of students who are participating in programs, okay, that have not been rigorously evaluated, and we are not really sure how they are learning or what they're learning. Okay, In medicine, we would call that running untested interventions. And somehow we accept it in education. So I'm going to argue that this is actually a very fundamental ethical issue. So what happens when we don't evaluate? There are three real consequences. First of all, very obviously, harm goes undetected. Research shows that a lot of times we cannot identify when programs cause unintended harm to students, community, or partners if we don't do formal, rigorous evaluations. There's a power asymmetry that we can only catch through evaluation. Okay. Secondly, the community voice is silenced. If evaluation focuses only on student learning outcomes, community partners become invisible stakeholders in a relationship, and this relationship is supposed to be reciprocal. Okay. And finally, bad practice is replicated. Without evidence of what works, okay, we replicate programs because they look good, not necessarily because they are good. Okay. So given the fact that institutions invest huge resources into service learning, I feel that we do have an obligation to confirm that it is indeed delivering. So this is the framework that I would like all of us to think about. There are 4 dimensions, not just one. Most of us do only the first one, and we do it rather well, okay? However, an ethical evaluation must also capture community impact, partnership quality, and institutional integrity. Without understanding what students gain, we are simply treating the community as a learning lab, not a partner. Okay. And one more thing I want to bring to your attention. Look at the partnership quality role. We are talking about co-design evaluation power mapping beyond satisfaction surveys. I would challenge us all to think about, when we talk about success, whose definition of success are we talking about? So I want to share a bit about what we do at PolyU. At PolyU, we have tried very hard. I would not go so far as to say that we have definitely succeeded, but we try very hard to build evaluation into the DNA of our service learning program. Every single subject goes through a quality vetting services, and we are talking about a very large scale here. Every year, we have more than 70 subjects enrolling almost 5,000 students. A faculty-led committee monitors all service learning subjects for quality, and the central office implements the policy and guidelines. Every proposal requires a risk assessment. A risk assessment and a risk management plan are mandatory, and this is every single year, especially for non-local projects. The non-local programs have accountability. We have expanded to non-local settings in Yunnan, in mainland China, Rwanda, Cambodia, Indonesia, and beyond. And every one of these has a context-appropriate evaluation requirements. And finally, there is research practice integration. We have various papers, we have various awards. Now, we are not doing all of this to get the papers and to get the awards, but they are a good demonstration that we can evaluate and we share with the community. So what have we learned from all of our evaluations? For lack of time, I'm just going to very briefly go through it, but we have learned 5 main things, okay? And each of these challenge conventional wisdom. First, we have learned that mandatory service learning does not need to backfire. If it is done well, mandatory service learning can even benefit students who are not very inclined to doing service learning to begin with. The second thing we have learned is that best practices matter a lot. Students' future community engagement is strongly tied to the quality of the experience and the civic learning outcome, not to their motivation, not to their interests. We also learned that even one service learning subject can have a longitudinal effect. 2 years out, we had an alumni study that tracked the graduates, and alumni who have been forced to do service learning showed higher levels of civic engagement. Fourth, and this is the one that surprised us the most, that effect was strongest among students who were not predisposed to service. The unlikely students gained the most. And finally, service learning, teaching service learning has a positive effect also on the teachers. We are talking about all the stakeholders here. We see that teaching service learning has a positive effect on most teachers across all disciplines. There are not some selected disciplines that tend to benefit more than the other disciplines. Now, what I want to share here in particular is that none of these findings will exist without a systematic evaluation. Every one of these findings challenge a prior assumption. So Finally, okay, 5 practical actions. I would like to motivate everybody here, okay, to do evaluations and evaluate all 4 dimensions in your own subject, at your in your own project, at your institution. Evaluate student, community, partnership, institutional. Okay, where you are evaluating the community, I would strongly encourage to co-design the evaluation with the community partners. We treat them as stakeholders, not as data sources. We also need to develop culturally grounded instruments. One of the main problems that we are seeing with service learning is that many of these instruments, existing instruments, were developed in a context that is not our own. And what works in a context in North America, in Western Europe, may or may not work for Asia, for Eastern Europe, for Africa, for Latin America. We also feel that we should publish and share findings, including null results, including lessons from failure. That helps to build the evidence base for the whole field, and it helps the whole field bring credibility. And finally, invest in evaluative capacity to train faculty, fund research, and for vice presidents, for senior management here, to count service learning scholarship in tenure and promotion. So I want to just end where we started, right? Are we sure that they are learning? The honest answer is that only if we evaluate. Only if we evaluate rigorously, inclusively, and ethically. Not just our students, our communities, our partners, our institutions. If we are not doing this, then we are not doing service learning ethically. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So without further ado, let us move on to the discussions and Q&A session. So I would like to open the floor for discussions. If you have a question, so please use the raise hand function in the Zoom and make sure your audio is working, or you might actually post your questions in the chat box. So any questions, comment, feedback, you're welcome. You can ask any of the speakers, I believe. So normally no question means the presenter present your works very clear. Okay, maybe as a chairman, I have the privilege to ask the first questions regarding for evaluations. Now, it is very important for evaluation. So that's why when I look at the topic, it's a very good topic. There's this keyword evaluations. Now, how do you encourage or mobilize the students? Sometimes the students just participate, in the course or in the service learning and so on. They may not be bothered, to fill in the form, to write comments and all this stuff, So any tips for us to encourage the students to spend time and write quality feedback for the teachers to improve?
Well, I can really relate what you say. It's sometimes very hard, of course, to get students give time for the things we ask from them. But I think all 3 of our presentations point to something, just having this work in the university as one of the university's curriculum structure. So it's just like if you let them on their own to decide at any time and ask them to fill out a form, I think it's much easier. What we try to do is set a specific week and time for our students for evaluation week, and then we ask our supervisors to inform the students beforehand that they are going to be filling out an evaluation form together and then discussing how the term went all together for half an hour. So ask them to bring laptops or iPads, whatever they want to use, or the phones, and sit down all together and do the evaluation personally, but as a team. So just maybe having a structured, prepared time for evaluation may help a little bit. It does help to us.
Yeah, I echo Zeynep's strategy. What we do is that we encourage our teachers to program in time for doing evaluations. So we are not allowed to discuss with the students. Actually, I believe that the university prefers that the teaching staff actually leave the room while the students are doing evaluations, and that's fine. But what we encourage our teachers is that we program in a set of time for the students to do the evaluations, explain to them what each of the items is talking about, and then to leave the room and then come back, say, 30 minutes later. And what we have found is that that actually helps the students be a lot more thoughtful when they are filling out the evaluations. And at the very least, that also boosts up massively the engagement rate of the response rate of the students.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you look at the chat box, there are some questions. One of the questions asks, which tool or strategy are you using for evaluating community impact? So anyone could help to answer these questions?
I think I will answer to this just in terms of my context. Thank you, Prof. Yang. So I think in terms of community feedback, structured conversations is our first go-to with our community partners. And as I alluded in my presentation, we speak to student preparedness, their communication, their professionalism, and the value of the engagement activity. And we steer that through guided prompts in terms of what it is that we're trying to find out from our communities in terms of how they found the engagement. And the focus of those structured conversations would go around, evaluating the quality of the partnership and how they deemed the engagement experience, while also recognizing that there is a potential for long-term community impact, and that obviously requires a more extensive and longitudinal evaluation method. Thank you.
Okay. Now on the chat box, that one question for Grace, one question for Zeynep. If you can look at it. For the questions for Grace, it stated that I was wondering how you got so many faculties on board for this huge number of service learning courses. Was it decision made by the university's board, or was it voluntary decisions by the faculty themselves? Grace?
Thank you for the question. So the university made service learning mandatory for students. It decided not to make offering service learning courses mandatory for faculties. But what the university did, and I do think that it was a very good decision, is that it made it very easy for the departments, for the department chairs to offer service learning subjects. The university gave financial incentives to departments to offer service learning subjects to teach their own students, to teach other people's students. The university also funded a central office, which is tasked with giving support to faculty members who want to teach service learning subjects, especially in recent years, faculty members who choose to bring the service learning subjects outside of Hong Kong to do international service learning. So kind of like we didn't have a stick. The university chose not to use a stick with faculty, for which I am deeply appreciative, but they chose to dangle a very huge carrot in front of faculty members and also department management. Thank you.
All right, okay. So the next question asks Zeynep about how many students are allocated per supervisor, and how many supervisors do you appoint per year, and do you offer any financial support to them?
Each year we have each term, I would say, we have over 600 students taking the project. So for per term we have about 40 to 50 projects that we open up. So it's about 15 to 20 students for each supervisor in their team. And each term we have about 80 to 100 changing from term to term supervisors and about 20 overvisors. Overvisors are also students who have been working as a supervisor for at least 2 years and on different two topics. So overall, our leading team for supervisors and overvisors are about 100 per semester, and the number of students taking the course is about 600. So it's like, I would say, 15 to 20 team group, a group of people for each supervisor.
All right, thank you. So there's one more question.
And I'm very sorry, we don't pay them. We don't pay them. We don't give credits. We don't do anything to publicly announce anything to give to them. We just, and this is also a very, very important question. Thank you, because it's a big discussion and it's always been a discussion from start. But the supervisor system, the role of being a supervisor is totally voluntary in our system. So this is where we want to keep it like that. So, and in the campus, usually they are called CIP slaves. So they do work a lot, they do give a lot of time, but all they get is actually the appreciation from our program, from the campus, from their peers, and of course, it's very important for them for their time after graduation, either to apply for a work or any master degrees or anything. So yeah, we don't pay them.
All right, okay. So one more questions from the chat box saying that I would like to ask whether the volunteering systems and schemes discussed in these forums can also be applied in corporate or industry settings, especially for employee volunteering programs. Can the engagement, supports, and evaluation methods used for students and also be adapted effectively for employees? Okay.
I'll go with this one. Thank you, Prof. Yang. So in terms of the prepare, engage, and consolidate cycle, I firmly believe that it can be adapted for employee volunteering by focusing on employee development. And it would obviously refer to what are the outcomes for that engagement in terms of the corporate environment. But perhaps preparation could help the employee understand the context, whereas the engagement would provide meaningful participation for the employees. And then also a structured reflection would help taking the engagement experience into a professional growth or professional development experience for the employees. And although the outcomes might differ, the overall process will still remain applicable. So whether you're working with students or employees, meaningful engagement really happens by accident. So there's always an intentional preparation that will take place. There's support, there's reflection, and there's evaluation that will come through at the end. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So one question for Grace, also from the chat box. So considering the wide applications of service learning, which strategies you use for assessing the community impact?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And it's very true. There are so many different types of service learning projects out there. And the evaluation has to follow the nature of the project. So now, one thing we do suggest that you have to differentiate between evaluating the impact on the community versus evaluating the impact on the community partner. Okay, so on the community, for example, for outreach workshops, right? For example, STEM workshops, we actually will evaluate the knowledge or the awareness or the self-efficacy of the participants before and after the workshop, right? So that's a very direct way of measuring, right? For a community, for a service that involves going to work with elderly and do reminiscent therapy, there are standardized evaluation instruments that are used for measuring those. Okay, so my suggestion for this is to borrow from the literature. There are a lot of these tools that are in the literature, and then also work together with your community partner in terms of how to adapt it for use in your own context. Evaluating the community partner, we look a lot at capacity development. We look a lot at, we have to rely a lot on structured interviews, focus interviews, mainly because a lot of times there is just simply not enough mass to be able to get to any kind of statistical significance. So we rely on focus interviews. We looked at whether or not the projects had an impact in building the capacity, in expanding the reach, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I apologize. It's not a very concrete answer, but given the breadth and the diversity of different kinds of projects, I think that is the best answer that I can give.
Okay, thank you, Grace. I think it's about Tom, unless you have pressing questions. All right, if not, then let me conclude. Basically, as we come to the end of today's sessions, I would like to sincerely thank our three speakers, Zeynep, Kim Tamsin, and Grace, for sharing their valuable insights and experience with us. I would also like to thank all the participants for joining us and contributing to the discussions. Today's exchange reminds us that while our institutional contexts may differ, we share a common commitment to creating meaningful learning experiences that nurture students' sense of responsibility, compassion, and readiness to contribute to society. I hope these ideas shared today will continue to inspire reflections and collaborations across our institutions. So thank you once again for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you at the Futures Evolved Salons of PolyU and also USRN Forums. Have a very good day. Well, I should say, have a good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.